So Alan and Kit, we are recording and we are live streaming currently. We have Will Fisher and Nathan. I'm sorry, he's not showing up on my screen. Nathan, there you are. Moran from EDC. I believe the lieutenant from NYPD Graffiti unit said he would be available as well. I'm not sure if he's on, if he's one of the callers using the phone in. *6 is unmuting yourself, or you just unmute yourself through your smartphone. And then *9 is to raise your hand if you're on the phone. But you do have quorum, and
all right, then let's rock and roll. So welcome, good evening, everybody. This is the April meeting for Manhattan Community Board 4's ACES committee. We are meeting virtually due to the pandemic based on an order by the governor. And we have 4 things on the agenda tonight. NYPD and EDC are here to talk about graffiti and specifically graffiti removal and deterrence. The Hudson River Park Trust will be joining us to talk about their education programming. We're going to have a committee discussion and hopefully a vote on a letter to summarize learnings coming out of our forum on DOE admissions policies. We have a couple items that we're hoping to hear updates on, and then Blake has also previewed that he wants to introduce a new business item about sidewalk conditions. So I will do my best as always to keep us moving, aim to get us out of here by 8:30, but no promises. Let's kick it off with graffiti. If the NYPD is not here yet, let's start with EDC.
Great. Hey, good afternoon. It's Lieutenant Miola from the NYPD Vandals Unit.
Great. We appreciate you joining. Was there a presentation that you were planning to share, or were you planning to sort of talk through the issue and the situation?
Oh, we're just going to talk through some issues and some questions that I was emailed in regards.
Great. I'm glad you had a chance to review those questions. Why don't we do this in terms of order of operations? It'd be helpful to hear the responses to the questions that we shared from the NYPD, and then we'll pass the baton over to EDC, because I know they have a presentation that they've prepared, and we can go through that as number 2.
So in regards to the first question, have I observed an increase in graffiti complaints? From last year to this year, we have seen a increase of about 33% of graffiti complaints. That could be due to numerous things. There was a big initiative on this past Saturday for a cleanup. So a lot of precincts were doing complaint reports, identifying locations for cleanups. So that could be one of the trends I'm seeing. Another trend was less people in the street due to the pandemic. A lot of stores are closed after a certain hour of the night. Not many people walking the street. This tends to allow the vandals to go out and graffiti different locations. The typical response for us, we are the vandal unit, and we investigate every single complaint report that for graffiti in the city. So to walk you through a quick incident, the 5th precinct has a complaint of graffiti. The patrol officer will prepare a complaint report. That complaint report will go into our database. One of my officers will review that complaint report. They will conduct an interview with any witnesses, the complainant. They will do a camera canvass, hopefully to identify any perpetrators, and hopefully it would lead to an arrest. So far this year, my unit has done very well in apprehending the individuals. We arrested over 129 individuals for making graffiti. We closed out numerous complaint reports, which was a big increase from last year. For the third question, who's responsible for the cleanups? The precincts, the sectors, they're responsible for the cleanups for the borough and for the precinct. We don't really get involved with the cleanups. Just because we're a small unit and we cover the entire city, we won't have enough manpower to do that. And the last question, pre-COVID, we visited various schools throughout the city, and we spoke to the students about graffiti. We're hoping once everything resumes back to normal, with schools of full capacity, we could do that back in September. As of right now, we haven't done anything school related because of the pandemic, so we're hoping to do that. Also, another thing is coming to this meeting. We would like to we need the public's help. If anybody sees vandals out there committing graffiti, call 911. Take a picture of a license plate if a vehicle's involved. If there's video, preserve it for us. I'll have one of my officers go to the scene, take pictures, hopefully download the video, and our main goal is to make an arrest for vandals. So, anybody have any questions?
Judith, I see your hand.
Yes, so thank you very much for your presentation. And I just want to clarify, did I hear you say that it's the precinct's responsibility to clean up the graffiti in the area? And then,
Well, I'm sorry.
Did I hear that correctly? I'm sorry.
When it comes down to NYPD, if the question was if my unit's responsible for the cleanup, we're not responsible for the cleanup. Usually the precincts will conduct the cleanup. I'm not saying they're responsible to clean up every light pole in any business. That's actually to the responsibility of the business owner to clean up. We do have officers that will respond to different locations, and they will offer a free cleanup for the homeowner or the business owner. But it's not technically our responsibility to clean up.
So if I reported graffiti on a building for years and nothing's been done, I should follow up with the precinct?
Correct. Call the precinct direct. You could either call 301 or the precinct direct. They will send an officer to that location. They will prepare a complaint report. Like I said before, that complaint report will go to my unit and we'll investigate it.
And so this graffiti, so who's responsible? I'm talking about an abandoned building on 24th Street that I've made multiple 311 complaints to, and nothing's been done. The people that are supposed to be the owners have never done anything. The police have never done anything. I don't know, am I missing something?
Well, the issue with private property, I can't just send a unit out there to clean up the location without the owner's consent. So, for example, 123 Main Street, they have graffiti in the side of the wall. Sometimes they don't want to clean it up, and we can't force someone to clean up that graffiti.
Well, we had a little discussion with our group, and then we found something on the internet that said the property owner gets a fine for not removing graffiti. Is that true? Well,
yes, but we don't issue the fine. I would probably Department of Buildings would probably be a better unit that would be able to answer that question. My unit does not issue fines or citations to homeowners or business owners for not cleaning up the graffiti.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I see Leslie also has her hand raised. Folks who are joining us from the public, you should see the option to raise your hand at the bottom of your screen. If you all would like to ask any questions after committee members have had a chance, we will open that up as well. Leslie?
Yeah, I think this might be more of a question for EDC, but I'm very confused. There was a graffiti removal team with the DSNY. That's all they did. They removed graffiti. It was around for years. That's what they did, and they were good at it. They were called the graffiti removal team. They were disbanded because of COVID, from what I understand, because of budget cuts. And it's confusing to me if we're trying to untangle responsibilities from police that aren't public safety. Why are we moving graffiti removal from DSNY to the police department? Unless I'm wrong, but I know there was a graffiti removal team. It was called, what was it called? Like Graffiti Free NYC. And now that was budget cuts. So I don't understand, why is it reemerging now as a NYPD responsibility? So I don't know if this is a NYPD question or an EDC question.
Yeah, so good evening, Leslie. Will from EDC here. Perhaps, and I'll defer to the chair and to Jesse and others on this, but perhaps we could give a quick overview of the program that you just described, and then to have sort of both sets of facts out there, and then we can have a discussion from there. Would that work?
Totally,
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't know if I had all my facts
Of
right.
course.
Okay, thank you.
totally okay with that. Do you want to go ahead, Will, and then Sergeant, if there's anything you want to add, we can hear that as well.
Great. All right. Well, I'll go ahead then. So good evening, everybody. Will Fisher here. I'm with EDC's Government Community Relations team. I cover Midtown and Lower Manhattan. And then I'm joined here by Nathan Moran from our Asset Management Quality of Life team, also at EDC. So quickly, yeah, like Leslie and Kit mentioned, thank you all for having us this evening. As many of you know, Leslie alluded to this, the city underwent a significant amount of budget cuts and put projects and programs on pause as a result of COVID. Obviously, both decreased tax revenues at the city level, sort of uncertainty about the future, as well as increased spending on COVID response, led City Hall and OMB, as well as operating agencies like EDC, to sort of put pause on non-essential, non-COVID related projects and programs. So we had most of our capital work was paused for at least 6 or 8 months, and then a number of operating programs for which EDC receives budget from the city to perform, including the graffiti-free NYC program, like Leslie, you correctly mentioned, have been on hold. So we've had I believe we get the majority of the revenue from that program comes directly from the city, EDC, and then I'll let Nathan explain a little bit how it works here. But EDC, we maintain a contractor crew, several crews that go out and respond to a number of the complaints that come in through the 311 system. So we're sort of working with the city to provide a supplemental service. We do have actually, since Jesse reached out to ask us to come to the meeting, we have had some potential good news on the horizon regarding the restoration of some of these services. So Nathan can get into that a little bit more. But as of today and probably for the next few weeks or months, because of COVID, the program has been on pause. But again, there's sort of some good news ahead. So Nathan, do you want to give a quick overview and then both of the program and then over kind of what we're expecting by the summertime?
Sure. So thanks, Will. Hey, good evening, committee. It's good to talk with you guys. My name is Nathan Moran. I, as Will said, work in our asset management division at EDC. And I appreciate extending the invite to talk. I'm more than happy to talk with you guys about graffiti. So just to add, touch on what Will said and then add a little bit of color. Since 1990, founded in 1999, actually, or created in 1999, the Graffiti-Free NYC program is a graffiti removal service that's open to the public, a citywide service that's overseen and managed by EDC through a joint partnership of sorts with DSNY as well. DSNY handles a lot of the data collection and reporting. They also oversee the 311 process. They oversee some of the back end, collection databases. But the program is operated and managed by EDC. And exactly as Will talked about, in mid-April of 2020, given the significant budget cut that needed to be made at the time from City Hall and OMB announced an indefinite funding pause for the program. And just for everyone's background, that's been the state of affairs. The current status quo for the last year now has been the program has been unfortunately on pause as budget cuts were announced for the program. However, there's certainly good news coming down the horizon in the past couple months, and more recently, the mayor announced the launch of the City Cleanup Corps, which I'm sure many of you have heard about and are becoming more familiar with. In that speech, which is a large interagency initiative, which EDC will be part of. They announced a whole host of quality of life initiatives, which include a part of that being graffiti removal services. So there are still more details to come in terms of what that's going to look like, when more announcements about that will be made, the funding portion, but EDC will be playing an active part in the mayor's announced city cleanup corps, and graffiti removal will be a part of that, which is exciting news.
Thank you, Will and Nathan. Anything that makes sense to add from the NYPD perspective on that question?
No, he covered it all. Thank you.
Great. Leslie, I see you have your hand back up, and then we'll go to Alan, and then we'll go to Blake, and then we'll go to Katie.
I just wanted to follow up, Kit. So I just want to clear. So because of budget cuts, it was taken away from, or the DSNY, right? It was put on pause. So two questions. One, I don't understand where now NYPD comes in. That's weird to me, for lack of a better term. You know, if we already have a group that does it, and we're trying to keep the policing, why are we now going to the police and add another responsibility on their plate? I mean, that's a bigger question, obviously. I don't understand the connection with the police. Second is, I don't know if this is you or the mayor's office, but it seems that in talking with some of the DSNY guys, if this is their graffiti removal team, is, you know, with you and DSNY, and now you're taking their budget away and cutting that, and then all of a sudden transferring it to a non-union graffiti removal program, is that a little dicey too? I'm just trying to figure out, it feels like it's just swapping things around when we had a very, you know, effective team. And now it's kind of like they're citing budget, but you're just moving the money to police and non-union. I'm just trying to figure out where, do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to kind of figure out the circular reasoning.
Sure.
Yeah,
Leslie.
and it makes sense. And maybe really quick, I'm not sure if between Nathan and the sergeant who's on the phone, clarify sort of because I don't think that there was an explicit shift to the police department. Perhaps the police department has a certain set they take care of, and we have our others. But generally, Leslie, the program that we're talking about having lost funding for and bringing back is most likely the one that you were thinking of in terms of long-term cooperation and partnership with the community and, you know, the folks that do a good job. Nathan and Sergeant?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to that to mollify any concerns or anxieties people might have. There hasn't been any, you know, fundamental transfer of responsibilities or, you know, the program away from EDC to another agency. The EDC has long operated and managed the graffiti-free NYC program, which had just been on pause the last year. And when it comes to the local PD districts or DSNY or even local bids, for instance, I know that oftentimes they have a small graffiti removal capacity. And that might be kind of what the question arises from, where they've been responding to requests because they have some capacity, which I'm sure the sergeant could speak to as well. But for the program that we run, that's still very much, you know, that hasn't, there's been no transfer of responsibilities for the graffiti-free NYC program.
And I think I would just add to Nathan's point, occasionally we've gotten through that program requests to do, you know, for example, graffiti removal in a park, graffiti removal in the city agency building. And in a lot of those cases, it's up to that city agency. So unfortunately, it's not quite so clear cut as to which request falls where, but, you know, we do our best. Primarily, we are dealing with ones on private property, for which, like the sergeant said, we do get permission from the property owner.
Would I be able to add something? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
So there's a little confusion about being NYPD is not responsible for the actual cleanup. We, like my unit a few months ago, we secured a paint donation, which we distributed citywide to the NCOs. And the NCOs, they would do an operation once in a while, and they would clean up the community. It's not the NCO's responsibility. I believe her name is Leslie. I'm sorry if I confuse it. We don't have a unit in the NYPD that is strictly responsible for cleaning up graffiti. Our main purpose, my user's main purpose, is to enforce graffiti. So I don't know if I clarified that.
Alan, you were next.
Thank you, Kid. Well, I was just going to follow up the second the sergeant just said to Leslie's point. I think this recent cleanup was basically a community outreach from the precincts, maybe just a one-shot deal, just a goodwill, that kind of thing. So I think that's what that is. That was about. But to get back to what Judith was saying in terms of buildings that aren't responding, buildings that aren't taking care of the graffiti on their walls, or does your program, does the EDC program just go in and do it, charge them back, and you just go in and clean up somebody's wall, which is a problem to the community, but the building owner doesn't want to take care of it? Can you just go in and do it without permission from the homeowner or the building owner?
Nathan, you want to?
I can just give just an overview of how the graffiti removal process works.
I'm sorry, and one other question. Do you charge these folks back in any way?
Yeah, so why don't I just
Go
I
ahead.
can answer all of these questions by just like giving a rundown, like soup to nuts of how the graffiti removal process works. So the Graffiti-Free NYC program is an entirely free program that's open to the public in all 5 boroughs. And how that works is through the 311 reporting process, where any member of the public, whether it be their property or whether it isn't their property, can report graffiti to be removed at any location in the city. Once that's entered through 311 and collected by DSNY, waivers are sent through DSNY's legal department to the property owner. That's to ensure that if the property owner would like to keep the graffiti on their property for whatever reason, they have that right to what's called opt-out, basically, to elect to keep the graffiti on their property. If they consent to having it removed or they don't respond, then it's transferred to a DSNY's cleaning queue, and then it's readied into a queue for eventual cleaning. So like I mentioned, it's a process that's entirely free to the public. And it also works to DSNY to do the best they can to ensure they've received prior approval as well. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what the process looks like.
And Alan, to make sure we answer your question, there isn't currently, nor have we contemplated any sort of, at least EDC does not levy any sort of fine or citation. The Department of Buildings may have something, but I'm not sure about that.
Blake, and then Katie, and then we might be able to wrap up this item.
Great, thank you all for the presentation. And so I have 2 questions. One was around the 311 website, and I noticed that on the website it has a disclaimer about the Graffiti-Free NYC program being disbanded. So I'm wondering how people will actually report incidents of graffiti that would be cleaned up in the future program, and wouldn't it be better to actually just collect the data on graffiti issues, to get an accurate data set rather than discourage people from reporting it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can't speak to the language that's right now. I'm not actually totally sure that's what DSNY has on the 311 website, but I do know in communications with them that as after the mayor's announcement and with the city cleanup corps, as we look to bring back the program, they will be sending out and updating their communication accordingly to make sure that the public is aware of what the updated process is, what's the latest with the program and with the 311 app. So I can tell you that they should be making those changes accordingly as we know more information.
Got it. And do you anticipate that it will require a new report in order to get into the queue of issues to be remediated, or is the agency going to look back at all of the current 311 reports on file?
I think that's something that's still, they're kind of like working through. DSNY, I know that they had some questions that they need to talk with their team about, their IT team and their legal team as well. So I'm not entirely sure on the answer to that question.
Got it. Okay, that might be one incident for our group, our committee to get involved in. We might be able to spread the word if we do need to make additional reports at the time that the program is restarted. And then my second and last question is, just if either NYPD or EDC had worked with any youth or arts groups, on remediation for graffiti, or, trying to use spaces that might otherwise be unutilized for, more community art.
Yeah, Blake, that's a great question. So EDC also operates a significant amount of property on behalf of the city. So for example, we have a number of industrial buildings in Sunset Park. In places like that where it's sort of our property that we're managing, we have done that in a few cases, but we haven't done that in terms of a private property. I love the idea though, in terms of we do hear often, both in context of this program and other projects that we're working on, that of course if there's artwork there that has been put together by the community, obviously it's discourages people for that. But we haven't done anything like that formally through this program. And then Blake, I just want to touch really quick. It's a great point you made around the backlog. A year off of the program is a pretty long time when it comes to this stuff. And Nathan, I was hoping you just wouldn't mind sharing more or less like a volume number in terms of number of reports that we handle in a year, just in terms of sense of scale, because it is quite a lot. It kind of surprises me as well.
Sure. I believe the last number I had was the last full year in fiscal year that the program was operating. We cleaned over 14,000 properties in a year. The last previous fiscal years, when the programs have been able to operate at near full capacity, we're able to do a lot of great work and clean citywide across all the different boroughs. So I think what's been really good with the program and what's been demonstrated this past year is how much community buy-in the program has and community support. So I think that's been really helpful to people to recognize and to help get the program back up and running.
And the only thing that I brought up the 311 issue is, when I did look at our community district in particular, it did look like the 311 graffiti reports actually went down year on year in 2020. And, that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. So there might be, some reporting issues that maybe we can help to get the word out that, hey, it's open time for reporting again, if anyone has issues when the program restarts. Thank you.
And Blake, I think that's a really good point. Since the service has been down for some time, once we get a better idea of sort of the size and the shape of the reboot, we'll obviously make sure that Community Board 4 is aware, since we know that you all have a particular interest, and make sure that you're aware. And then I think if there's particular problem spots, submitting a new report at that point would be helpful. If there's anything, you can always feel free to reach out to me as well, or Jesse can do so in terms of if there's anything that's, I think one thing that we're trying to keep in mind in terms of having talked about the program reboot is where it's making, where graffiti that has gone up in the past few months is having an impact on small businesses reopening, because we know that can sort of, be something difficult for a shop owner or a restaurant owner that's facing all sorts of other issues. So, if there are places like that where you all have recommendations, by all means, feel free to reach out in addition to submitting a new report.
Thank you.
Katie, you're up.
Great, thanks. So 2 questions. If a building hasn't been cleaned up after multiple years of 311 reports, should we assume that a waiver was requested by the owner, or should it keep being reported, or? At what point do we throw in the towel on this question? That's my first question. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I can hear both questions, and then why don't I just...
Okay. And then the second one is actually about enforcement. So this may be more for the sergeant, but it just seems that there might be an unusual division of enforcement responsibilities, because I think what we heard is that from the sergeant, you said that your main purpose is enforcement of graffiti laws, but it sounds like it's enforcement only vis-a-vis the graffiti artist, as opposed to the buildings, enforcing the rules about the buildings needing to make sure that they get cleaned up. And it sounds like that responsibility is more with the Department of Buildings. And I just wonder, is there any interaction between the Department of Buildings and the police about enforcement, or because it just seems unclear. How does one follow up to make sure that there is any enforcement going on about the rules of, that the building owners are supposed to be taking some responsibility for the cleanup?
Yeah, so Katie, really quick on that. I didn't necessarily mean to call it Department of Buildings. I don't actually know if it is a sort of code violation to have graffiti on a building. I think one thing that's important to note is that collectively we would figure it out if there was some sort of hate speech or something else that was threatening or problematic. So I by all means, please raise that if that's the case. But we typically in a normal circumstance, we do need that waiver from them to access their property and reach it. So that's not something that we would necessarily do without that consent. So Sergeant, I don't know if you have anything else to mention.
Hi, Hayden. No, I haven't reached out to the Department of Buildings. That's actually a good point. I will make it a note to reach out to them. But my unit is, we strictly enforce graffiti. We investigate the complaints of graffiti, and we pretty much go after the individuals committing the acts of graffiti. But I will add that to my notes, and I will reach out to the Department of Buildings to see if A, if they're responsible for it, and B, if they are, maybe I'll build a liaison with them and see how we can go forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
So I took another peek at what EDC shared with us, and it looks like it's more of an informational pamphlet than a presentation. Was there anything in there that you all wanted to make sure you shared, or did it all sort of get organically covered?
Looking back through the questions that you all sent over, I think we've organically covered all of it. That's a nice way to describe it. I will make sure, because there was a press release from City regarding the cleanup core that Nathan mentioned. I'll forward that to Jesse right now just to make sure that folks see that. As noted before, I think we're still working on some of the details in the background. So looking forward to rolling that out, particularly the details, and we'll let you all know when we do so.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate the time and you all answering our questions, EDC and NYPD. Thank you for prioritizing this. Leslie, you're raising your hand.
I'm just curious if if the DSNY, if DSNY is in, are they totally cut out of the loop now? Are they kind of, are you retiring them? Are you taking them out of the game? Are you bringing in relief? I don't.
No, they still play a key role. They are the agency that takes in the 311 complaints. We work collectively with them on the data arrangement and sort of issuing work orders based on the feedback that they get in. I'm not sure if there was sort of a particular instance, Leslie, that you had in mind in terms of somebody explicitly who worked for DSNY helping in the past. But obviously, there's they're very much still part of the program.
You're on mute, Leslie.
I didn't say anything. It's okay.
Okay.
Alan, I saw your hand is going back up.
Yeah, I think in terms of the 311 call-ins, EDC doesn't have a position on the 311, right? Am I correct in assuming that? Otherwise, it would go directly to you. But DSNY has a position on the 311 call-ins, so they'll process the ticket, so to speak, and then send it over to you.
That's correct. Yeah. And exactly like Will said, a restart of the graffiti program will mean active collaboration with our partners at DSNY. They still very much, as they have, play an important role in the graffiti removal process.
All right. Any final questions and or motions, or should we close the book on this one?
I would do a motion. If no one's known yet, I would write a letter saying that we would encourage that it would be fully restored to DSNY. And, you know, this is a big budget cut. DSNY was cut out. I'm sorry. I just got a text you. I'm still confused, and maybe it's me. I'm just not sure of where DSNY is cut out. So they don't clean it up now, right? Now it's a whole new army of people that are cleaning up, not DSNY. They just take the ticket, or else you would have come. I'm guessing you would have said, hey, the graffiti-free NYC is back in business, but that's not the case, right? Or,
so Leslie, it is the graffiti-free NYC program and that same, you know, sort of structure that we're operating that through. The announcement, which the press release I'll send to Jesse shortly, is specifically regarding something that the mayor's announced called the Citywide Cleanup Corps. But this is sort of one of several programs and verticals that falls within that umbrella. So it's framed in terms of you know, the city's recovery from COVID and the need to take quality of life issues seriously, but it's restoring the graffiti-free NYC service through the same you know, the same function as it was before.
thank you.
Can I ask a question or get clarity on something? I think Leslie's concern, and Will, maybe you can clarify, or maybe Nathan, but from my recollection, it was solely a DSNY project, and then years ago, and I think this is before COVID, tell me if I'm right, it got shifted to EDC, right? This was, I mean, the cut to the program itself was due to the recent COVID cuts, but in terms of the changeover from the actual program moving to EDC, that was prior to, way prior.
Jesse, I think that sounds right, and because I certainly know it predates my tenure.
So
yeah, many years ago, there might have been, I believe, some type of ownership
right.
switch. But how the program has been operating and will continue to operate in the coming, you know, in the future as we look to restore the program, will be EDC overseeing and managing the program, working in conjunction with DSNY to do all of their collection and data reporting.
Yeah, so just because, I mean, I remember, I mean, I've been doing this since 2008, and who we originally dealt with was DSNY, and then somewhere around it shifted over to EDC. So I just wanted to make sure we're factual if we're going to write something that we know that change was not.
Jesse, I think what they're saying, and correct me if I'm, I think the ticket, everything, the information they're taking is still DSNY. The people though who now actually clean up, which also used to be DSNY, they had a unit, right, guys, of DSNY workers.
That was years ago, Leslie. That's my point.
No. It was pre-COVID, though EDC, I'm sorry. Yes, though EDC oversaw it, the DSNY workers would go out. It was the graffiti removal team. They would have like the jumpsuits, the orange whole thing. I think now what they're saying is that the tickets are still going to be collected by DSNY, but they're not going to be the actual physical graffiti removal team. It's going to be this new corps that the mayor has just proposed of new workers that are hired separately. That's my understanding.
Yeah, so that is something I want to be clear on. So this is Nathan and I both, I think both of us have only been at EDC probably 3 or 4 years, but it's functioned in the same way throughout all of that time and will continue to function as so. So there's the branded graffiti-free NYC trucks. They've got the uniforms and all of that you may have noticed and all that. So that's at least how it's been for a couple of years.
I can speak with that. For many years now, we've worked with labor partners to help run the program, and they've provided the staff. Truly, I can't speak with any confidence about when or if those workers were DSNY. I don't know, certainly for a long time, and since I've been here for many years, we've worked with various labor partners to provide staff.
So let me just try to quickly summarize, and then we have two new hands. David Warren was first, and then Josephine. What I'm hearing is many years ago, DSNY was actually staffing the graffiti removal. At some point, it sounds like no one knows exactly when, many years ago, that shifted. And EDC has been the ones actually staffing the graffiti removal for some time. And then due to COVID, the budget for that was paused, and now it sounds like it's going to be reinstated. So the idea is we're going to go back to the program running the way it did before COVID. David?
A lot of that is correct. Truthfully, I'd have to look into it or talk with DSNY. I really can't speak to that part about if they were, how active they were in years prior. But the rest of that is accurate. But I don't want to speak about without really knowing for certain if they were or weren't, working the program.
It seems logical, and I always thought this was the case. I guess I was incorrect, and I know this might be outside your lane. That sanitation used to have an enforcement unit, like if you put campaign posters up in the wrong place or advertise on certain lamp posts, the enforcement unit, or your trash is in the wrong place, they give you a ticket. It would seem that same unit would do the enforcement for the graffiti. That would make a logical. I don't know if you can comment on it, or if they do once in a while do that. I don't. That's why I'm startled that the cops are involved in this.
That's just for the enforcement though, right? I think. Okay, I just have one question really for Will or for Nathan. So when are you guys back on, basically? Your budget has been cut. Do we know when that's coming back? And until then, I guess graffiti is covered by the cleanup corps. That's what you're telling us, right?
Yeah, so Josephine, it's a great question. So we sort of, it was just rolled out the announcement the other day by City Hall. So we're still working out the details in terms of budgets and how that exactly will get deployed, but it should be up and running within the next couple of months. And I would say, like, within the cleanup core umbrella, Graffiti Free NYC is going to operate more or less the same. So we'll follow up with you all with those details, but it should be in the next couple of months. And I would say, again, more or less the program will operate the same. There may be some slight tweaks, but generally it's going to be as if we've turned the switch back on, sometime in the summer. But we'll keep you all updated as soon as we know the timing.
Thank you.
All right, so there is a motion that Leslie has put forward, so we need to talk through that piece before we close out this agenda item. So we're
I
gonna
can
shift
withdraw
over
that.
to-
I can withdraw it if you guys want. I'll withdraw the motion.
Then I will go back to saying thank you for joining us, EDC and NYPD. We appreciate you answering our questions. We'll look out for that information that you're going to share with us, and we'll move on to Hudson River Park Trust.
Great. Thank you for hosting. Stay healthy. Take care.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for the invite, everyone, and it was great talking with you guys. So we look forward to staying in touch.
All right, so we have Tina Walsh, and I believe she really did bring a presentation. And so Jesse, if you could tee that up for her, please.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's nice to meet you. My name is Tina Walsh. I'm the Senior Director of Education and Outreach for Hudson River Parks River Project. Would you folks like me to share my screen for the presentation, or did you have the PDF handy?
No, I can do it. I'll be doing it in 1 second.
Great. Okay.
You'll just have to cue me on the slides, Tina.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Jesse. So just to kind of get started, I know everyone here is really familiar with Hudson River Park, but I wanted to give a little bit of background on some of the education, research, and sustainability that we have ongoing at the park. So you'll see here, this is our logo. In 2020, we actually merged with a nonprofit group called the River Project that was also previously based out of Pier 40. Very similar mission of education and research. So following the retirement of their founder, We folded the river project operations into Hudson River Park. So now together, my department within Hudson River Park Trust is called Hudson River Parks River Project. So that's maybe a little bit of a change from in past presentations when I've come by CB4 before. All right, so you can go to the next slide. So understanding everyone knows a lot about Hudson River Park, maybe something that people don't know is that the water in between the piers is a designated Estuarine Sanctuary. So this informs everything we do, and it's why we have such a robust mission of education, research, and sustainability. So I love starting with just showing these are the animals and the organisms that call our waters home. And that's really our anchoring point, is connecting New Yorkers to these waterways to build an appreciation and understanding of the importance of our waters and the impact that we can have on it. So one of the primary ways we do that is actually through education. We can go to the next slide, please, Jesse. So in terms of the type of programs that we run, they're all STEM and marine science focused. And there's a couple different ways that we're teaching students and the public. So one would be field trip programs, really aimed at hands-on and engaging STEM activities for K through college students. We also have public drop-in programs aimed for anybody to learn how to go catch and release fishing, interact with wildlife, support oyster research, and more. And then since COVID, we've pivoted a lot of our energy to be focused on STEM activities and digital resources. And actually, we can go to the next slide because I'll show you kind of a taste of the type of programming we do. So in terms of field trips, right now, everything is actually virtual that we're running this spring. So we have schools tuning in both locally and from the outer boroughs. Usually our programs are about half and half. So we serve usually just under 50% of our groups are Manhattan-based, and then the remaining are from the outer boroughs. But focused on fish ecology, plankton and microscopy, human impact, and environmental justice. So those are our main 4 themes this spring, and they've been really successful. Looking ahead to some public programs, this summer we actually hope to host a lot of hybrid programs, so things that are both virtual and online. I wanted to share some of what we have planned for this upcoming summer on the next slide, if you don't mind switching, Jesse. So we have, as I mentioned, virtual field trips, they started about last month. They've been going really well, and we're running a bunch of those per week. We have our virtual public program starting in May. Those are typically ran on either Facebook Live or Instagram Live, and really designed to be a behind the scenes look of what we're doing in the park. So for example, we check a fish survey every week, and we record that live on Instagram, show the public what fish we're catching, we measure it, we identify it, and we answer any questions they have about it. We also do programs where we invite local marine science experts and other scientists that we work with to share their research in a program called Ask a Scientist. That's a really great program because we're able to leverage scientific partnerships that we have and create a space where students and members of the public can really connect with that scientist and ask them questions live during a program. So those are just examples of some of the virtual programs that we're continuing. Even this summer, they were really great during COVID last year to have all these different programs. We're still able to connect with our audiences. But then in addition, this spring and summer, we are going to continue doing some in-person public programs. So some programs we had success in the fall running socially distant and in person include a lot of walking tours and tour-based programs. So you might have heard or visited Pier 26, which opened in the Tribeca section of Hudson River Park. This is a pier totally dedicated to the estuary, as I like to say. And as you walk from east to west on the pier, you encounter the native shoreline of Manhattan from a forest. And then all the way on the western end, you end up on this incredible tide deck, which is a built tidal marsh designed to flood and lower, and you see tide pools during low tide. So we're going to be doing more tours of the tide deck, actually starting on Earth Day is when we're kicking those off. So we'll have them in just 2 weeks. Then in addition, the lower photo here, this is from the Wet Lab Aquarium. So the Wet Lab was one of the really keystone initiatives of the original river project, and we're excited that we're able to reopen that aquarium this July. It houses about 15 tanks using Hudson River water and native species. Everything from striped bass to eels and seahorses that we house in these tanks. And it will be open for public tours a couple of days per week starting in mid-July. Also want to share one of our kind of flagstone events, usually happens up at Pier 84, would be our Submerged Marine Science Festival. Last year we hosted this fully online. This year we're taking a hybrid approach where we're doing some morning panels with partner groups where they're sharing research, field science, and other work that they're doing. And then in the afternoon, we're going to do some in-person programs in the park. So that'll be in October, and we're announcing full details soon. So that's what we have coming up in the summer. You can check out hudsonriverpark.org for more information on that. But I wanted to also share a little bit more about some of our other initiatives. We can go to the next slide for a second. So how do we do all of this, and who helps us with this? Well, much of it is actually through the work in support of high school and college internships. So we have paid opportunities where students can learn STEM research, science communication skills, and other leadership skills working on our programs. So an example is we have crews of educators that learn how to teach students different science concepts. We have high school students that conduct research projects during the summer and are mentored by science majors from City College, CUNY City College University. And then we also have interns that are focused on research, which I'll tell you a little bit more about some of those projects. But really, this is a major support that we do. We sometimes have a crew of up to 20 interns during the summer. And you'll see in the bottom left corner, this is actually from 2020. We hosted a virtual internship last year with a series of 8 high school students that were researching microplastics, actually. So they would do a microplastics study at home and then created a scientific poster and reported on that. I'll flip to the next slide to show you a little bit more of internships. So it gives a kind of a taste of the type of work experiences that these students have. As I said, everything from working with students to the general public to conducting authentic scientific research. We are going to be opening applications to hire students, which we're really excited about. As I mentioned, we had a really small crew last year, so we're excited that we'll be able to welcome some in-person interns this year, and I'll share some information about where that would be on our website. And we'll flip to the next slide, please. So alongside education, there's always a really strong connection to research and getting the community involved in science initiatives. So just highlighting what some of our major science programs that we have going on. We have a number of studies focused on researching oysters and restoring their populations back to the Hudson River, including a pretty large restoration project that's going to be installed in the Pier 32 segment of the park this summer. We're studying fish populations, both in connection to the 30-year-long fish survey that the original river project was conducting. And then in addition, we're measuring fish populations through environmental DNA, which is kind of a more cutting edge technology to determine populations based on their DNA in the water. Beyond that, though, it's also really important to track impacts of our actions on our waterways. So water quality and pathogen testing, or human bacteria, are both really important. During the boating season of May to October, we're testing for bacteria in our waterways, and that information is publicly accessible for those that are boating and on water and interested in that information. And then, of course, plastics are a pretty big problem in our waterways, impact wildlife, impact our water quality health. So we're measuring both plastic pollution, which you can see at the bottom right. We have volunteers working with us on a shoreline cleanup. Our first cleanup of the season will be the first Friday in May for an event called Riverkeeper River Sweep. And we'll have other events throughout the season where members of the public can help us clean up shoreline plastics. All right, we'll go to the next one, please. And then lastly, I just wanted to kind of tie in kind of the third pillar of the work we do, which is sustainability. So of course, when we're talking about the impact of plastics, it's about measuring and knowing what impact it has, but also how do we reduce it. So the park in the past 5 years has really grown out two pretty large sustainability initiatives. The community compost program is in its 6th year right now. Right now we have 10 drop-off locations throughout Hudson River Park. We paused for a brief period of time during COVID for about 3 months and then reopened in late August, early September with 3 new sites. This is a program we're really committed to maintaining and growing, recognizing that New York City has actually decreased its resources aimed towards compost. A number of green market sites haven't reopened yet. The brown bin program has been suspended. So this is something that we're making sure it's accessible. The bins are there 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. And then to build off of that and just continue to raise awareness for compost, we have public events to teach people how to compost and to encourage how to build that sustainable behavior. So the example of my favorite event is our pumpkin smash, which we do the Saturday after Halloween every year. So we invite people to bring their jack-o'-lanterns. You've been hosting it in Chelsea Waterside the past 2 years, but they bring their jack-o'-lanterns and we give them baseball bats and shovels and let them break it into compost. It's an event I can't believe anyone even lets me do. It's just a really fun one. And last year we got about 1,000 pounds of pumpkin to our compost machines after that. And so following the success of the compost program, we wanted to build in something to really address the problem that plastics were having on our environment. So 2 years ago, we started the Park Over Plastic initiative. And this aims to reduce single-use plastics from all aspects of our operations, both in our office, to our tenants, to field users, to events that come into the park. It's a many-faceted project. And the ways that we've kind of started and phased into this is by just increasing the number of bottle fillers, for example, increasing access of water fountains in the park, better access to recycling. Those are kind of some of the foundational steps we've been taking. And then we're continuing to create opportunities to just reduce that plastic and reduce our carbon footprint as a park over time. And then this past winter, we just wrapped up a 2-year study, just measuring behavior change of is this program working? How do we improve it? How do we continue to build success? So this season, we're really looking forward to implementing new signage, for example, and things that'll just continue to share the messages of the program. So kind of all of that connects back, the education, the sustainability, the research, it all just helps us create this community of river stewards and individuals that are really connected to our waterways. So that's a taste of what we do. And if we go to the next slide, I just have my contact information, but I wanted to welcome, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to follow up with me in an email. Our website has a ton of information and resources, so you're also welcome to check out hudsonriverpark.org. And then, of course, our social media, we're also sharing a lot of our science initiatives and education programs, so you can follow us at Hudson River Park. But if you have any questions now, I'd be more than happy to take them as well. And thank you all.
Thank you for that presentation. I do have a question, but I'll wait till other folks have had a chance. Judith?
Thank you, Tina. I love the Hudson River Park. I just went with some friends on the Saturday and I was so happy. I said, I have to go there more often. A couple of questions I have is that when you're talking about hiring for the students that hope you're going to be able to reach out to the different schools within the community to hire students within the community, I hope there's outreach for that. And if you need the contact information, I'm sure Jesse or somebody at the community board could do that. The second thing I heard about the beach coming. I didn't know you didn't talk about that in your presentation, and I was very excited to hear about supposedly a beach coming, and I don't know whether it's going to be a science beach because you were very nicely focused on STEM, and that was great. But I heard it was going to be like a bathing beach where people sunbathe. The third question I have is that I also read something about that you're doing some energy from composting. You're creating energy from composting. So I'd like to hear more about that. And my last question is that you need more recycling bins because you do all this great stuff and it's a beautiful place. Thank you very much. But when I go there, I don't see any recycling bins. So there's garbage pails wherever there's a garbage pail, there should be something for recycling. And maybe there should be somebody there, like a teenager, that educates the people that say, okay, what are you putting here, there, and supporting the keeping the park beautiful. So thank you for doing what you do. And I hope that you can answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, I'm happy to run through them. So in terms of recycling bins, definitely agree with you. That is one of the things that our 2-year study showed, is that you need to pair recycling bins with trash receptacles. Otherwise, you don't give people the correct choice to make, right? They can't recycle unless they have the option. So that's something that we're working to improve and really kind of correct that issue, because essentially before, for every 5 or 6 trash bins, there was only 1 recycling bin. So we're trying to kind of get enough bins to change that issue, and we're working on that one. So that should be improved soon. In terms of Gansevoort, so that's a project that's really amazing and we're very excited about. Construction set to start this spring. The design actually has a north and a south side. The south side is the one that's being referred to as the beach. And it has this kind of innovative design where there's a series of steps where you can sit and be closer to the water. In general, Gansevoort's a really interesting site because it's one of only 2 soft shorelines that we have in Hudson River Park. As a park made of piers, it's all hardscape. So for us, the soft shoreline is really exciting from a science and an access point, or we can do a type of fishing called seining, for example. So that south side is where it's referred to as a beach. And it'll have the access where it's closer to the water. Not quite a sloping sandy beach into it, because the wave energy and the tides would kind of take away all the sand. So that's why it's still a little bit of a harder edge rather than sand. And then the north side of Gansevoort is actually going to be a built salt marsh. So that environment, similar to the tide deck, but physically anchored to like the ground area. So that'll have a series of plants more native to the coast, and we're really excited about that because that's an area that we already see a lot of waterfowl and wildlife. Really, when you have a lot of hardscape, it's tough for birds, for example, to take a rest. So we find they really kind of just gravitate to those softer shore areas because they come and have an easier time getting on land, especially when they're younger. So that's the Gansevoort. Internships. I think if there's any schools or groups that you recommend we reach out to, I'd be more than happy to add them to our list. We typically do a lot of recruitment from CUNY and SUNY, as well as any scientific partners that we work with. So if there's specific schools that you have in mind, for a lot of the positions we're hiring are going to be college age programs. So usually we prefer at least 1 year done towards their degree. So someone that's a little bit older, able to work a little bit independently. And then regardless, we'll circulate the job postings as we have them and as we're able to share, so that you're welcome to forward within your network and to others in CB4. And I feel like I missed one. Which one did I miss?
The waste converted to energy. I was reading about that.
Oh, okay.
That's very exciting. Where are you doing that? First, I want to know where, because I want to check it out.
So I think what you might be referring to is we have an industrial compost machine. It's a solar powered machine that turns organic waste into nutrient rich soil. So it's that machine is actually helping us turn over compost at a much higher rate than if we just had piles of waste. So when you have like a garden and a compost heap, it can take a couple of months, versus this machine can turn over compost in a week. So it's that we're increasing our capacity with that so greatly, but it's not generating any of its own energy.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I do have a question, and then I think it looks like we'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening, Tina. Obviously, you all are doing a lot of really awesome programming. Curious if you've ever considered actually running a school?
A school within
the
like
park.
A partnership within Hudson River Park?
Or directly running it, something like the Harbor School that's sort of place-based, vocationally focused, not necessarily like a micro school, but a smaller school.
That's interesting. It's not a relationship we've talked about with DOE before. I think a lot of it depends on space and facilities and location. So we don't necessarily have what I would say is an appropriate site within the park as it stands now. However, we do have really great relationships with DOE. We actually have 2 Harbor School interns working with us this spring. We also historically work with alternative high schools like City Ed School and the Day and Night School to provide internship opportunities to students as well. So I'd say we really are thoughtful about partnerships with DOE, but I'm not sure we have the infrastructure or resources. As we're going ahead and building in the park, there are plans for a future estuarium. So I think that facility in itself will be a pretty large commitment and a lot of opportunities for students, high school and college age, to learn marine science and help out as interns in that programming.
Katie, I see your hand went up. Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, sorry, just one last quick question. I was curious, you said that you've been collecting data about the different programs and that you have 10 composting sites. I was just curious, do people actually bring composting to the park and drop it off in those sites? And especially because there have been some cuts and things to other composting programs. I wondered if that's been successful and if you're planning on expanding it.
Yeah, so actually, it's funny, when we started the compost, we started 7 sites, and there were some that I wasn't sure if people would bring compost to. So an example is Pier 84. That's where we have one of my classrooms is up there. I was like, I don't actually know if people are going to bring compost. That's actually our top spot. So that's where we get the most compost. So much so where we've had to put 2 compost bins up there during the summertime. So I'd say that we were pleasantly surprised that the community really enthusiastically participates in this program. We've been averaging close to 500,000 pounds of organic waste every year. That includes horticultural waste from the park. We also take on some Grow NYC waste and then the waste from our drop-offs as well. And so then even though we were closed down last year for a couple months during COVID, the later half of the year was at an accelerated rate. So we actually had about the same amount of compost in 2020 as 2019. So it's kind of trending upwards, and we're in the process. We're hoping to get a larger industrial machine to process more, because we have seen an increase in our waste, and we want to meet the need of the community and continue to create compost. And actually, one of the things that's great about it is it helps us, because really we're creating this incredible nutrient-rich soil that we don't have to cart in anymore, and we're also not carting out any of our waste. So we're decreasing fossil fuel consumption in that way, and also saving money because we're not buying soil, we're making our own. So it's created a lot of benefits for the park in addition to the community.
Alan?
Thank you, Tina. Wonderful presentation. I think a lot of folks just don't realize how much education and outreach park is doing. 2 things. What is your youngest age group that can participate in your education programs? And go ahead.
So we have done a number of programs with preschool groups. Usually we like to start kindergarten age though, because we get a little more into more STEM concepts, but I'd say we can do programs for around 3-year-olds and up.
And if folks want to see the actual composting process going on, is that just over by the heliport?
Yeah, exactly. So that's at the entrance is at 31st Street. You would cross into the park, and it's just north of the heliport. So interestingly, we do for Earth Day have a public virtual program about composting. We'll have our compost technician giving a tour of the site. So anybody can tune in. That's 12 p.m. on Earth Day, 4/22. It'll also be recorded afterwards. So if you can't watch it at that time, it'll be either on our website and on our Facebook page for later watching. And then this summer, we're also going to offer socially distant tours in the compost center, where you can really see the process in action and kind of learn how it goes start to finish. It's a really cool circular process when you're in the space and get to see it all.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Hi, Tina. Just a quick question. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the presentation and the work that you're doing. We mostly on the community board work with K through 12 schools, not so much colleges. So I'm interested in knowing more about your internships for high school students. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and then I could follow up with you later.
Sure. Yeah. So we work with high school interns in two primary ways during the school year. So one thing that just is, in terms of equity, it's always really important to us that interns are always either paid or receive credit. So in terms of school year programs in the spring and fall, we partner with high schools to offer internship programs where students are receiving credits. So with that, typically we've just forged a number of connections over the years. That's where we've partnered with City Ed School and Day and Night School in the past, where interns are working with us about 6 to 10 hours, as well as the Harbor School. So I'd say those programs, students are either focused on education or science. Sometimes they're focused in the wet lab aquarium, learning skills, developing a project, and then kind of working alongside someone on our team to build those skills. In addition, in the summer, we have a program that's through the National Science Foundation, and it's rooted in tiered mentorship, and its goal is to create opportunities for students historically underrepresented in STEM. So with that program, we have a number of partners we recruit from, including the Intrepid Museum, who we work with really on a number of education initiatives, but they have a program called Goals for Girls, which I'm sure a lot of you might be familiar with. So young women that go through that program, as well as the Young Women's Leadership School in Harlem, are eligible to apply for this summer-long research intensive. That's a paid internship program. They're mentored by science staff from Hudson River Park, and they have a mentor from CUNY City College. And that's a program where they have a different science research focus every summer and the opportunity to build up. Essentially, that program aims to just create a lot of students don't continue on with science. Young women kind of stop learning science after a certain point. So it's to support them going through undergraduate, graduate, and PhD. So that's a tiered mentorship program that we've been funded through the Science Foundation to conduct.
Thank you.
David, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. You're doing such great work. I'm actually very intrigued as a side note with the seahorses in this. I never knew they'd be in Manhattan. But my question's regarding, do you have any relationship with community gardens in the area? Do you give away compost to them, or maybe certain plants or something? What is your relationship with community gardens in the area?
So thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. We do give out compost to groups that are interested. So if there, I don't know if we give any actively to community gardens, but if there are groups that are interested, you please connect them to me, and I'd be happy to get them to our horticulture staff. I know that for example, at our pumpkin smash every year, we always have bags of compost people can bring home to their plants. So it's something that we're able to do. It's not necessarily something we seek out, though. It's if a group kind of highlights that they have a need and would like some, that we kind of make it happen. And speaking of seahorses, we got our first seahorse last Wednesday, which is always a sign that it's springtime.
All right, I think that is it. Thank you again for coming and for talking us through all of the wonderful things that your organization is doing. One final nudge for me is think about my question. The Brooklyn STEAM model, I think, is an interesting example of a new version of what high school can look like, where they're partnering with, I think it's about 6 to 8 high schools in Brooklyn to bring kids into the Brooklyn Navy Yard to give them afternoon programming that puts them on a trajectory for college or a middle class entry-level career pathway. You all have such a fantastic set of programs. Obviously, a very strong staff must have put that together. You're sort of interestingly positioned to do something similar, in my personal opinion.
Will do. Thank you.
Item number 3. We are on to the admissions forum that we did last month. So the thinking here is, my hope is that we will write a letter similar to the way that we did with our first forum. I am planning to take that on, and I'm eager to hear from folks on a couple things. What should we put into the letter? If anyone wants to help me with writing it, I'm always happy to have any assistance that people want to offer. A group of us met coming out of the forum to sort of debrief learnings, what went well, what didn't go well in terms of planning and pulling the thing off, and what we would want to put into a letter. Anyone who was part of that meeting, please add anything I might be missing, but my memory is that we said we would summarize the event, summarize the key points from the live poll that we did that indicated how participants felt about the policy changes and gave us a sense of who had showed up to listen to the forum and learn from it. So
foundations are, and so because on the foundations of the letter and what Kit's going to put together, that's fine, but we can't having.
That's the piece where folks probably have the least clear idea of what we would be saying. So just to refresh everyone's memory, we asked 4 questions, which the following best describes you. Do you have all the information you want about policy changes to middle and high school admissions? Should implementing policies that intentionally increase diversity in our public schools be a priority for the New York City DOE? And then after the 1-year pause that's currently in place on the policies for middle school and high school admissions, what should happen to the New York City DOE's recently changed admissions policies? What identify themselves as a parent of a New York City DOE student. The second biggest segment that we saw was folks who are community members of our district. For that second question about whether or not folks have the information they want, a slight majority, 56% of people said yes, but that still means that after coming to a forum about these policy changes, over 40% of people feel like they still don't have the information they need. So we are going to push for more information sharing and stronger, more proactive communication. For the third question, there was an overwhelming sentiment that the DOE should be implementing intentional diversity encouraging policies with that and support it. And then on the last piece, 67% of respondents said that policies should be, some policies should be reinstated. Who are in attendance wanted the policies to be reinstated. So the way that I was planning to frame that one was very few people want us to go back to the policies that were. The overwhelming majority of respondents either want
should be embraced fully, right? Like, wasn't it, what did you just say? It's like 86%, right? The way it's being proposed, there isn't a lot of support for either. And so I think there needs to be much more community exploration and discussions about what the community does want, right? So to say that, I don't know, I think we have to be careful. We're not supporting anything that currently exists, right? Because I think everybody wants a lot more information and wants to talk it through more. So I just think we have to be a little more careful about how we say that. And I think I have to say, like, I think the way you handled it, I think the way the whole thing went was great, but it made it very clear, as you said, that people want more information and that there's no perfect answer yet, right?
I enlist you to review the language and get your feedback on it, because I agree with everything you're saying. And I think what we heard loud and clear was 89% of people want the DOE to implement policies that will intentionally increase diversity. and only 7% of people said they want to go back to the old policies. What we actually want the DOE to do is a big question mark.
Right.
That's what the data says to me. And so I think, yeah, we can't overstate it, but we should be, I think, clear about what people are saying is they want change. We just don't know what that change actually is yet.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. And Kit, I will even go so far as to say I would be happy to help draft or whatever, however I can support. So there you go.
Famous last words.
I do worry about that.
And then Maria.
I mean, Kit, you just said it, but I'm just gonna double what Katie said. Not only can we, I don't think we can say, oh, we like what's going on now, because it hasn't even been done yet. We don't even know what's going to happen. I mean, Josephine can probably speak better to this, but they're going to do the lottery numbers, and then it's going to pan out in September. And I'm sure over the summer is going to be, you know, a crazy spinning wheel as well. So I just don't even know what we don't know. Like, I think they're going to try it, and then we're going to see where we're at. So I would agree not to say we like something before, or where, you know, where people say they like something before we know what it's going to be. What's the turnout?
Yeah, so it's another really good point, and we could potentially go as far as to say we want to, you know, study how this one-year change actually impacts enrollment patterns, because that is not something that anyone has the answer to yet.
Kit, I was just going to ask, I missed it if you said it. You probably did say it and I missed it. Just the number of respondents for the survey? I can't hear you.
Wouldn't be a meeting if I didn't stay on mute. I didn't actually put it on the slide that I put together with the data, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but we should have that in the notes or in the screenshots of the polling questions, so we can make sure that makes its way into the letter.
Okay.
Overall attendance was not as high as with our Reopening Schools Forum.
Okay.
It was, I want to say mid-60s or mid-80s, but it was not in the triple digits the way that.
Okay, not in the triple digits. Thank you.
Any other questions, suggestions?
Actually, just, sorry, one last question, Kit. I thought we had talked about that we might, I don't know, be advocating, after hearing all of the data and all of the information, we might be advocating for something more, though it sounds like what we're proposing right now is basically just a summary of what we heard and how the audience reacted, right? Which is, you know, totally fair enough. But I guess I'm just wondering, you know, we talked about that maybe we'll do another forum at some point. And so I just didn't know, like, is that something we want to include, or do we want to say, and we want to have a follow-up forum in the fall, and we'd like to get a lot of the data about that, you know, to get ready for that. Or I don't know if there was something else we wanted to add about sort of next steps, or if it's just really, this is like a summary of what we've heard so far and what's important to us to just hear how it develops.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're raising those. And, you know, Alan, Josephine, Mercedes, Sarah, other folks who are involved in these conversations, definitely chime in if you want to add anything or disagree. But my answer would be, I'm not sure those things go into the letter, but I think we definitely would like to have the folks who were involved in the forum and are still interested and are in the education subgroup talk about, where do we take this from here? You know, there are a number of, I think, really good ideas floated for a potential next forum. The one that sticks out the most to me is one focused on students with a student panel, but also potentially revisiting this topic and getting more nuanced in the position we take on these questions around admissions and diversity and enrollment. But if other folks had a different take or have other suggestions, I'm all ears.
I mean, I'd be very happy to do, you know, if we could do another forum, maybe not one that's all students, but certainly include students, and we should do some sort of follow-up after this lottery-based system and see how it's going. That's kind of what I'd like to know. But I just want to clarify what's actually going in the letter. Kit, you're saying that you want to summarize, and Katie says, you agree with that, but is this board taking a position or not taking a position? I guess that's what I need clarification on. And of course, I'd like to see the letter, and I'm happy to help as well.
Would love to have your help. And the position that the board will be taking is in line with the polling responses. And so it would essentially be, and we can work on the language here, we agree that the New York City DOE should implement policies that intentionally increase diversity and not go back to the policies that have been paused. But we would stop short of giving a specific recommendation on what the policy should become, because the data is a little bit muddled and we didn't actually provide specific alternatives. We just can see that only 7% of folks want to go back to the old policies. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions or suggestions?
I would love to see our committee, I don't know if we've done sort of written polls before to the community or how we do that, but I would love to reach out and get feedback. I think I've mentioned maybe this to you before, Kit, but just hearing sort of like, especially from, maybe it's from all families, like, what are your top 3 concerns? What are your issues? And really specifically, I'd love to hear, like, what do you think are the main issues to help with educational outcomes for Black and Brown youth in our district? And just ask for people's input, right? Yeah, because I feel like it's important not just to just be hearing from the DOE about one topic that they're addressing, but to hear from our families and frankly from our faculty and the teachers, the staff, everybody. Just I'd love to get that input. But is it even possible? Like, do we have some system we can put out a poll and hope that people respond?
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Katie, but I think that question could be a lightning rod in so many ways. I mean, I don't know if, to send a poll out, how do we improve the educational outcomes of Black and Brown youth? That is assuming that our Black and Brown youth have poor educational outcomes. So if you want to say, how do we improve educational outcomes for all students, then that's, I think, a better way of putting it. But if you want to have a poll on diversity, then that's something different. But I would be very careful of, how you use that kind of language.
Yeah.
I think I would agree with both Katie and Joseph, but I think we can maybe come up with some sort of a survey. Just, Blake is going to go into the survey that transportation did in terms of street maintenance. So it's not the same thing, but I think we can, given some conversation about this, come up with some sort of a survey that we can get some feedback on without, getting into any kind of hot water in terms of what kind of direction we're taking, but just an informational thing or something. But I think it should be something we can maybe talk about.
So Alan, how would this poll be different than the poll that Kit already did for the forum?
Can I just ask a question first before Alan answers that, just for clarity's sake and process sake? Katie, are you saying that we should have this survey sent out and completed for this letter, or you're saying
no, separate.
Okay,
no, separate. No.
You were I felt like we were very close to getting a motion and a vote on the letter.
Okay, yeah. Then I pause this discussion.
And then the answer to the question was,
okay.
we can do a forum, or a survey or a poll on our own, and I think you guys could have that conversation on the wording and what we're looking to get out of it and all that. That we can easily do that. So
okay,
it's on your shoulders to do it the right way that is
No,
appropriate.
my proposal about the survey has nothing to do with the letter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so motion to write a letter as described, which Katie and Josephine have both generously volunteered to help out with. Is there a second?
And you too, Kit.
Hold on. Kit, you cannot make the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Someone else has to make the motion.
What he said.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Someone make the motion. Yeah, thank you. All right, so Josephine made the motion, and Elzora, I think, seconded it. All right, there we go.
All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone present, not eligible? All right. So Katie, I think your idea is a good one. Go ahead, Jesse.
No. I think, Jessica, your hand was a little late. I'm just clarifying that was a yes, right?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I think your idea is a good one, Katie. Josephine, I think your push around being thoughtful about the language is a really important one. And so my suggestion is perhaps if the two of you together or one of you wants to take the lead on setting up like an education group conversation about should we do a survey? If we do a survey, what should that include? Would be eager to have one or both of you run with that.
Yeah. Josephine, should we pal together and figure this out? I bet we
Sure, absolutely.
Great.
Cool. So then we are on to updates, and friendly reminder to everyone, we have at least one new business item that we're going to talk through. And we are 24 minutes away from missing my deadline of ending this meeting by 8:30. So let's try to keep it moving. Jesse, I could be misunderstanding this agenda item, but I thought that maybe you were about to talk through the different bullets.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not know that. Let me get there.
You have to prep them.
Okay. Well, I can. I think most of these, I can speak mostly on the summer youth employment program, but I think the status of the high school for environmental studies building lease and renewal, lease renewal and capital projects, we heard, I think, through the grapevine. I believe maybe it was an email thread from Josephine. Is that correct, Josephine? I don't mean putting you under the gun. So I'll defer to you as to the details, but I think it's good news overall. Probably not everything's figured out, but at least there's some progress. So, I mean, Josephine,
Yeah, you're right about that. So the High School of Environmental Studies is working on getting a renewed lease. I believe they have about 2 years left on their lease. Their lease expires in 2024. However, they're not eligible to make any capital improvements to their building because the capital improvements have to be at least 5 years out. So they're in conversation right now with the SCA. But the SCA, as I understand it, likes to wait until the last minute before they actually sign on the dotted line. So this is a very tricky situation. It looks good, but anything could happen between now and then. But I'm hopeful that they'll come to a resolution with the owner of that building.
I'll just add that I've heard through this, which is based off of our letter, based off of your committee's letter on this issue. This was really taken up again by the borough president's office, and Matthew Washington, who's the deputy borough president, really kind of was focusing let's say this, our letter and then the very kind of unhelpful response letter from SCA, if everybody remembers, kind of really stirred the borough president's office. And so they've been really pushing hard on this issue. And so I just would say that I think that was very helpful, but I think the spark that lit this as to get some progress for this issue came from you guys on that because of your letter. Sorry, I'm going back at the other topics. So the summer youth employment program. So, I mean, I think people saw that the mayor, there was an announcement that the program is going to go ahead this summer, and there's obviously it's still all in conversations with the council in terms of how much funding exactly you'll get, and that actually means like literally placements and jobs and things like that. I think this was a topic that was both of interest to you guys as a committee a while ago, and then it has recently become a topic of interest for the Social and Racial Justice Task Force. The co-chairs of this committee and then the co-chairs of the Social and Justice Task Force, 3/4 of them are all here anyway, can probably tell the conversation better than I can, but I'll just summarize it very quickly. That I think just because of the number of things that you guys had on your agenda this month, that we were going to ask the Department of Youth and Community Development, which oversees the Summer Youth Employment Program, to come to the task force meeting. And actually, the task force's agenda is growing daily. All good things. So Google has confirmed that they will be attending to speak about their recent announcement about the increase of funding they're going to put towards jobs in New York City. We'll have, like I said, we'll have the Department of Youth and Community Development there. We've reached out to a couple other folks who should be there. So the task force agenda is going to be employment, jobs. And so ranging from youth to obviously any age. And so that will be great. I think going forward, obviously, the co-chairs will continue to communicate about how to handle different issues around summer youth employment. And I'll beat the same drum. This was one of the major issues raised at our from our community needs assessment that we paid for a few years ago, that came out of Maria's committee, housing committee. So I think this is great. And so I'll say that. And then finally, Learning Bridges Center at Hartley House. So I should have put this first so we ended on a better note. So my understanding, and I think actually my suggestion would be when the DYCD folks come to speak about summer youth employment, you can raise this as a subsequent issue, because my understanding, not only is Hartley House on hold as the program there for the Learning Bridges Center, but the program in general is on hold. I don't have really much more information than that. I heard this from a conversation I had with DYCD folks. Things might change, obviously, with the budget being figured out and negotiated. And that does not mean that you as a committee can discuss and decide to continue to advocate and reach out either in writing or just having them come back to you guys in May and give a more formal explanation, because you did write the letter. So but that's where we are with that.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone else feels, but I mean, we're 2.5 months away from school being out for the summer. So at this point, I don't feel that they're going to be, that there will be any program at Hartley House. And as you say, Jesse, I think the reason why they're pulling back on this is that there's been a big push to get kids into school as many days a week as possible, especially the younger children. So I know schools have been PS 111, for instance, is using one of the buildings for the Parks Department to sort of make up for extra space that they'll need. So I think that that's what the real focus right now is. It's no longer Learning Bridges. So I think the planning now has already begun for next year. So, I mean, I'm not really interested in, writing another letter at this point. I don't think it's really going to change anything.
Any other thoughts, reactions?
I guess I just have a question, like Jesse, Josephine, Kit, I don't know, anybody, has anybody heard about, like, is there going to be any extra programming or schooling available this summer for kids to make up where they may have gotten behind, during the pandemic? What are the summer school arrangements? Yeah, I guess I would just be curious if to know and if we should be asking questions around that topic.
So if other folks have heard differently, cut me off, but I haven't heard that there will be a substantially different approach to summer school this summer than there have been in previous summers, where it's sort of centrally run as opposed to a kid going back to their school with their teacher, or at least a teacher who knows of them. Everyone goes into sort of a pool of teachers who've been assigned to summer school. And my guess is that will happen in person as much as possible, similar to the way that school's being run pre-K through 12 right now by the DOE. But, you know, kids aren't going to be vaccinated, especially younger kids, for a very long time. And so, you know, next school year and beyond, I think if we're being real, still looking at families having the option of keeping their kids home, which I think a lot of families are going to continue to choose for a variety of valid reasons. So, you know, I think the beginning of next school year will likely look pretty similar to the end of this one, and summer school will look pretty similar to last year, with the difference being that some kids will hopefully be in person.
Do you think it would, if we do this written survey this spring, do you think it would be useful to ask a question around whether or not, or whether families plan on utilizing a choice, if available to them, to keep their kids at home in the fall?
I think it's a great question. My only wondering is if the DOE is going to ask that as well. And I think we should be thoughtful about making sure our questions, I mean, there's potentially value to asking questions to our community specifically, and then comparing that to the DOE's overall data set.
Yep.
But getting people to complete yet another survey, there is some risk to having redundant questions. I mean, families are already being asked to do all of the surveys from the DOE, from their school, from whoever else. So I think we probably want to have a conversation about what do we really want to learn from the questions we're asking, and what are people going to be motivated to actually respond to. But yeah, I think most large urban school districts have come to the realization that, yeah, next year they'll continue to have to provide a virtual or a hybrid option.
On that down note, I would have loved nothing better to see all of the kids back in school this fall, but I agree that that's going to be an enormous challenge.
They call me Mr. Sunshine. Let's move on to Jesse.
If you were going to move on to new business, I just had one quick update, just because I want to make sure people are aware, but that's all.
Yeah, let's move on to new business. I think one thing I'll put out there is, in a world where Learning Bridges sites get restarted, we might want to re-engage on this topic and ask that there be some sort of an assessment of how they're being spread geographically throughout the city, because it's unlikely that the Learning Bridges program will restart, but if it does, I continue to think that it's highly problematic that kids who live in our district don't have access to one within walking distance, many of whom are currently in temporary shelters or had been in shelters before COVID, and many of whom would benefit from that. So let's move on to new business. Blake flagged that he had an important item on sidewalks and surveys.
Thanks, Kit. And I wanted to share just some data that the Transportation Committee, led by Christine and Dale, had garnered from a sidewalk survey. It will be brought up as well at Transportation Committee this month, but I wanted to give this committee as well an opportunity to provide any feedback that we can share with Christine and Dale for the letter that they plan to write. So this survey was sent out, via the CB4 email, as well as to some block associations and other transportation-related groups in the city. It was primarily targeted at our district, but also, included responses from other districts. it turned out the response rate was quite good, where we got about 1,000 responses, about 80% of whom lived within Community District 4. And about 10% of responses were among the population of people with differences in personal mobility, which was another good segment to particularly get some feedback from. And so, the three areas that the survey went over were, number one, sidewalk conditions, number two, snow conditions, and number three, reporting of these issues. So on sidewalk conditions, and the majority of respondents characterized the sidewalk maintenance as poor or very poor. And some of the biggest issues that were mentioned were the puddles and the ponding, especially at corners. Some of the trash and rat issues that take place on the sidewalk, as well as the quality of ramps at corners. On the second issue of snow clearing, this similarly was deemed poor or very poor by the majority of responses. And in this area, corners were also a problem where, often businesses might not feel a responsibility to take care of those corner areas. Number two, the time that it takes for snow to be cleared from some of the sidewalks. And third, a particular area of concern being bus stops, especially when elderly people or people with differences in mobility have trouble boarding the buses at bus stops. And then on the reporting front, 311 was the most cited means of responding to these issues, but the majority of people actually didn't take any of the ways to report issues, primarily because, number one, a lack of confidence that their issues would be resolved, potentially from past experience when they don't see issues rectified, as well as, some lack of awareness in how to respond to some of these, or how to report some of these types of issues. And so, if this committee has any feedback, I'm happy to pass that on to Christine and Dale, or you have an opportunity as well at the transportation meeting, as an attendee to provide any feedback. And Jesse also put the slides that were prepared in the ACES Dropbox for your reference. Any questions or, any initial feedback?
Great job on getting so many responses.
Yeah, I can't take any credit for it, but it was very impressive.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, Jesse, by the way, that was well done PR wise. I saw it in every email, every website. I saw it everywhere.
I can't take that credit either. I don't want us to get too, don't judge, don't use that as the bar, because you're going to get to Christine Bertay is very good at getting, all of the transportation advocates on board. So yes, I think it helped a lot for sure. So we'll have to do the same thing with our education family survey if we want to have the same level of a response, just to throw that out there.
You saying get Christine Bertay to do it?
Pretty much.
Oh, all right.
You might just get transportation advocates answering all your questions. But,
I have a question just for overall the intention of this survey. Now we have the number, so this is just to push for the budget reconciliation, or for the new budget of the fiscal year that it's going to be discussed on the next year.
Yeah, I think it's multiple areas. There's a lot of data that can be referenced, whether it's a letter regarding the budget, or, whether this committee, for example, does more work on sidewalk impediments. There's some stats, as well as some of the commentary that I think could be used, to support the case for needs in these areas.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I just have one question. I don't know what we could do about this, but this was a big deal. I don't know if it's as big of a deal if you go more south in the district of Chelsea, but I know in Hell's Kitchen, Blake, they put in those new, the new ramps. I call them the red ramps, but with the red, the disability ramps on each corner. And evidently on most of them, at least up in the northern section here, they were done incorrectly. So they put all these new ramps in, and then they had to come back and fill with asphalt or something. Do you know what I mean? So the ramp isn't even, I don't know. I'm probably splitting hairs, but I know that was a big deal with the disability advocates. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it didn't, when they redid it, it didn't, the bottom of the ramp didn't even match up to the road.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to backfill. I don't, or
Yeah.
Jesse, do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I don't actually specifically, but I know that
Okay.
issue. I don't know that I do know that issue. So, yeah. And so it matters. There's multiple programs that do multiple ramps. And so that's, I think, part of the issue. So there's a multiple DDC, what's called a multi-site head ramp project, which really has nothing to do with DOT. And then there's DOT's capital projects. And then there is restoration projects. Let's say if a Con Ed came in and had to do some street work and they messed up a ramp, they were gonna have to redo it anyway. So if you wanna send me those locations, if they're specific locations, I can at least track down who's responsible and we can kind of figure out who the culprit is. But I think most times the ramps are done pretty well, but will agree that yes, there are cases of that for sure, that they don't do it. So I think it sounds like the DDC site, because they've just done a number of them in our district. They've just announced a number of locations in our district. So I would assume it's them. So we should get on them, is what I'm saying. So
I mean, is it even worth it now that it's done? And
well, yeah, because I think if we're going to do it again, I would want to know and make safe that it's the same contractor, then it's a waste of everybody's time and money. And this is, we should, get someone who knows what they're doing. Yes. So yes, the answer is yes. If you want to send me the locations.
Anything else for Blake to take back to trans?
Well, I guess I thought it was great. I thought the survey was great, the promotion, the deck, but I was curious, I mean, in general, just how significant these issues compare to other districts. And obviously we won't know because we surveyed our district, which makes total sense. Yeah, just like, how do we tie what is unique to our district, like maybe Penn South or certain areas where or other areas where we say like our district uniquely houses this population or has a density of this issue. Otherwise, like I imagine, like I spent a lot of time in Brooklyn and like, streets are like, you can't walk anywhere. And if you require a wheelchair, like forget it. So just how do obviously we want to continue to advocate for our unique needs, but how do we tie that then with something that's unique about our district?
Yeah, that's a good question. There were similar complaints, among the 20% of respondents that were not located in CD4. As you mentioned, I think it is a citywide problem. In the deck, there are some maps of where people cited as particular problems, which were some of the questions. And so you can see some, concentrations in particular areas within the district that, hopefully can be communicated to DOT and others responsible as areas to particularly look out for. But as you say, it's primarily in our district. Those maps are focused in our district. Great, thank you.
Jesse, I think you said you had an update and we are within striking distance of ending this meeting on time.
I want to make us that happen, Kit, I swear. I'll be very quick. This is just about PS 111, just because we've been dealing, SCA has been doing construction there. They have a big construction project. I just wanted to give you an update. Myself and Carl Wilson had a couple meetings with SCA. There has been some issues around the construction in terms of reports of them going over their 1030 noisy work stuff, some actual operational stuff about moving certain types of work to certain sides of the building, all of that. It's all predominantly good news. We've been dealing with the residents that live next door. We've had a couple meetings with them. We've had a couple meetings with SCA. I think we're in a better place than we were. SCA has agreed to do a couple things, which I think will make a big difference. In terms of sound mitigation and creating sound barriers, and then also changing their permit. They're exploring changing their permit to better reflect the work that they are doing there. So I just wanted to give that update in case you guys hear through the grapevine from residents whether that there were issues. There were some issues. We're working on them. I think we're in a better place. That's it. I had 829, Kit, so I did it.
Can I say something for 10 seconds? Just a quick reminder that anybody who wants to hear about the summer youth employment stuff should come to the task force meeting next Tuesday at 6:30. That's all.
Alan, it looked like you had something to say.
And Jesse, SCA still hasn't done anything with the website, with that letter we sent them about protocol. Construction protocol that we worked on. Right.
No, I mean, I don't think we got a response. You mean?
We didn't, well, no, that's the problem. We never got a response.
Yeah. No.
Okay. That's it for me.
Unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, which you can vote by just signing off.
Bye, guys.